Hey everyone, A Complex back with another video, and today we're going to chat about Kuva, with the Kuva liches having dropped in the Old Blood update for Warframe. Now is probably the perfect time to talk about what, well, Kuva is. Kuva has a pretty interesting lore behind it, and not all of it is entirely known, like exactly where Kuva originates from. We kind of have a small idea about it, but not really any concrete, like, this is definitely where Kuva comes from kind of thing. So I want to talk to you today about what we do know and some thoughts and speculations that I have, and then we'll see where that takes us. Now, before we dive into all things Kuva, I do want to let you know that there are a massive amount of spoilers about to happen. So if you haven't completed a lot of the Warframe questlines, especially things like the Second Dream and the War Within, even Chains of Harrow, I would highly suggest going to finish those before coming here and watching this video if you are worried about spoilers at all. Now, before we really dive into like different theories and stuff like that and different bits and pieces of what Kuva is and what this and that could mean, I just want to give you guys a Teshin's actual definition of Kuva. Now, this happens right at the end of the War Within.
You don't know what to do with it.
Tell me.
Some believe the Kuva within is the blood of Orokin ancestors. An elixir of power, of immortality. Others believe it to be a poison, a corrupting oil that brings madness and evil.
What do you believe?
I believe them both. But for you, Tenno, perhaps this Kuva is just a symbol that what you choose to do will define you more than anything.
Now, I know Teshin's definition of Kuva leaves a lot to the imagination, quite literally, actually. But the one important part that I took away from that is, well, two, I guess. One is the immortality part that he talked about. Now, we've all kind of always wondered, how did the Orokin get their abilities? How were they actually Orokin? And how is Ballas living forever? Well, more than likely, it's Kuva. The queens have lasted this long because of Kuva. And the question is, where does Kuva then originate from? We don't have an actual Kuva origin point. We don't know where it started from or anything like that. That's still a mystery in the Warframe lore. But what we do know is that your void-based powers as a Tenno are what allows you to defeat all things Kuva. So if you think about it, the Kuva guards that you meet on the Kuva fortress can only become vulnerable and allow you to kill them once you hit them with a Void Blast or your Void Beam. Think about the Kuva Queen that you defeated within the War Within as well. The only way to release those braids was to use your void-based abilities. When you do something like a Kuva Siphon, the only way to stop the flood of Kuva from getting into the, what I call a little vacuum cleaner, is through your void-based abilities. So are we dealing with something where it's Kuva is from the void, or are we dealing with something even more different in that Kuva comes from an entirely different place? Like, the sentients aren't from our sphere. They had to cross the void to get to us. Is Kuva something similar to that? And why is it void-based abilities are the only things that can technically end them in one way or another, or can allow you to end them permanently or not, is something that we actually don't know. You can make a case that even if you decided to kill the Grineer Queen at the end of the War Within, she might not actually be dead. If Kuva is something that grants immortality, even if, like I said, you do decide to kill her, you can make the case that she's not actually dead, and that Worm's efforts through the Kuva siphons to cure her or heal her are actually something valid, which is also kind of scary to think about, that there could actually still be two of those crazy lunatics running around, but that's an entirely different story. With your void-based abilities and how interesting and different that they are, I mean, so different that the Orokin really had never seen anything like you before, and they were going to kill you because they had no idea what to do with you, and you were so powerful, even like straight out of the gate as a Tenno, that could explain why you're able to kill and defeat, or at least weaken, a Kuva-based creature. So I don't want to say like easily, but after the War Within, you do it relatively easy. And if you take this back to, let's say, your Kuva liches, you can't actually kill your Kuva Lich until you have the correct set of mods. Now, why is that though? Why can't we kill our Kuva Lich with our void-based abilities if technically that's always worked before? You could make the argument that there is something else within the Kuva Liches that didn't exist before, like that the Kuva that was used to create the Liches was tampered with, or because of the way the Liches themselves are created, where you have to kind of kill them first and then they do the big explosion in order to become a Kuva Lich themselves. Like that changes things, so you actually need the Requiem mods in order to do it. There are a lot of questions within there, I know, but a lot of them are really interesting, and one thing I do hope that gets expanded upon as the lore continues on. Now, Teshin did also mention that Kuva causes, well, madness and evil, and it's not hard to say that that's not necessarily true because, well, you've met the Kuva Queen. She was batshit crazy and definitely evil. And then there is Ballas, who, well, his intentions probably weren't necessarily evil, were still evil, and he's still an awful individual in my mind, despite what the Chimera prologue tried to get me to do, which was to feel bad for him. I don't. I still think he's an awful individual and got what he deserved, but that's a story for a different day. But still, it proves that, does Kuva corrupt? We don't know. We don't have an example of somebody who hasn't been corrupted that is Kuva based. So is Kuva what causes the corruption? Is that why the Oricans ended up collapsing in the end? Is that why they treated the children of the Zariman 10-0 the way that they did? Would they have actually treated these kids with such fear and hostility if they weren't maybe corrupted by Kuva and saw what the kids could do and saw that as a threat? I mean, for all we know, the Kuva could be some kind of like living entity, and whenever you consume it, it kind of becomes almost like a symbiotic relationship. And if that's the case, it would make sense why most things that are Kuva based fear the Tenno. They want to destroy them instead of understand or learn from them, because maybe this is actually some kind of living organism or something like that, living entity, and it's trying to protect itself. We don't know. I know a lot of this is speculation, but a lot of it's really cool speculation in my mind. We also have another example of Kuva from way back when. Now, back when the Orokin fell after the war with the Tenno, there is talk of Unum, who we find in Cetus, the Living Tower, and we get the story that Unum gave their Temple Kuva blood to their followers to give to the animals of Cetus so they could track them in order to help defeat the sentient that was roaming the lands. Now, the sentient was only roaming the lands at night, and what happened was the sentient ended up finding these animals that were Kuva infected or Kuva based, depending on how you want to look at it, dissected them, learned from them, ingested all that good stuff, and from there learned about Unum and the tower, and then from there there's even more lore. But what's most interesting to me in that regard isn't that what happened in the end, it's what happened at the beginning, which was them learning about Kuva. Them ingesting, playing with, tampering with animals that were Kuva based and not being able to theoretically get enough. So do the Eidolons rise at night on Cetus because of how much Kuva they were exposed to? And is the only reason that you have to, or not the only reason, but is one of the reasons why you need your Tenno in order to defeat them, because of the same reason as like the Kuva guards, as the Kuva Queen, because you need those void-based abilities to turn them vulnerable so you can attack them with your Warframe. If that is actually what that is really cool, and just proves that Kuva is way more far-reaching than we even know, especially because Unum used the Temple Kuva, as it's put, in order to track the different animals. So the animals ingested it, and then they were able to track and kind of get feelers out for where they were, see the land, all this other stuff. So that implies that Kuva also creates a connection between the host and whoever else ingests the Kuva blood. So who knows how many Kuva-based connections are actually out there. Like maybe there's some sort of connection between Ballas and the Lotus based off of Kuva, or even us and Ballas, or us and the Orokin. We don't know exactly, but that is something that I hope we get to speculate on in the future as the lore expands. Now, the other thing that I wanted to mention was Orden Karis. Now, if you've done your homework on Warframe lore, you know that Orden Karis is, well, Ortis, Arcephalon. And before he was Arcephalon, he was known as the Beast of Bones. And what happened was, at one point, Ballas actually offered him a red vial and offered him immortality. Now, Orden Karis, being Orden Karis, refused it. And then there's some lore, and we're going to do a whole separate Ortis video, because Ortis is actually one of my favorite lore discussions in Warframe. And within that, you learn that Orden Karis ended up trying to kill and killed Orokin, and as his punishment, Ballas gave him the red vial, and it tasted metallic, which a lot of people have referenced, like blood having a metallic taste, this and that. And from there, he gained immortality as a punishment. So we do know that if you're given Kuva and you're not an Orokin already, it does cause immortality, which is really interesting and furthers what we learned from Teshin at the beginning of the video. But y'all, that is pretty much going to be it for me today as far as this Kuva discussion goes. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think about Kuva, where it originates from. Who do you think is actually in charge of the Kuva? What do you think the Kuva liches not being able to be killed by our void-based abilities, or even weakened by them, like other Kuva-based creatures that we've met within the world, actually means? Now, feel free to leave it in the comments down below, or find me on Twitch. I always love a good lore discussion. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your night and or day, depending on where you are in the world, and I will catch you next time. Bye, guys.